Every morning, before sunrise, a woman walked through the streets of London, stopped under strangers' windows, and fired dried peas at the glass until they woke up. That was not a prank. That was her job. Have you ever thought about how the Industrial Revolution actually woke up? Not how the machines started, not how the factories opened, but something much simpler. How did thousands of exhausted workers get out of bed at 4 or 5 in the morning every single day before alarm clocks were cheap, reliable, or common? Because if they were late, they could lose money. If they were late twice, they could lose the job. And if they lost the job, the whole family might not eat. In the 19th century, industrial Britain ran on time. Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, London, Belfast. Factory gates opened early. Mills worked in shifts. Docks, mines, bakeries, railways, all of them needed people to appear at the exact hour. But most working families did not own a dependable alarm clock. Some did not even own a clock at all. So in the gap between a world that demanded perfect punctuality and workers who had no reliable way to wake themselves up, a strange profession appeared. The knocker up, a human alarm clock. For a few pence a week, someone would come to your street before dawn, find your window, and knock until you woke up. It sounds almost funny now, but at the time, it was not funny at all. It was the difference between keeping your job and losing it. And one of the most famous knocker-ups was a woman named Mary Smith. Mary Smith worked in East London. Every morning, while most of the city was still asleep, she walked through working-class streets with a long tube and a pocket full of dried peas. She did not smash windows. She did not shout. She did not wake the whole house. She aimed at one pane of glass and fired. Tap, tap, tap. A tiny sound, sharp enough to wake the right person, but quiet enough not to wake the entire street. That was the art of the job. Mary Smith became famous because of this method. Many knocker-ups used long sticks, bamboo poles, or wires to reach upper windows. Mary used peas. Her customers were dock workers, factory workers, people who had to wake before the city became visible. And they paid her each week not for entertainment, not for comfort, but for survival. Because in a working-class home, oversleeping was not a small mistake. It was a financial threat. One missed shift could mean a fine. 2 missed shifts could mean dismissal. And dismissal could mean hunger. So people trusted Mary Smith with something very personal, the beginning of their day. But Mary was not unique. Across industrial towns, there were men and women doing the same job. Old men, widows, night workers, sometimes even police constables, earning a little extra before sunrise. You did not need a certificate to become a knocker-up. You did not need an office. You did not need equipment beyond a stick, a list, and a reputation. But you needed one thing more than anything else. You had to be there. Every morning, no excuses. Because if the human alarm clock overslept, everybody else did too. Imagine a street in Manchester at 3:30 in the morning. It is cold. The sky is black. The air smells of coal smoke, damp stone, and factory soot. A woman walks alone with a long pole under her arm. She is not wandering. She is following a route. House number 12. Wake at 3:45. Second floor window. 3 taps. Wait for movement. House number 17. Wake at 4 o'clock. Back bedroom. Keep knocking until the curtain moves. House number 24. Wake at 4:15. Dock worker. Heavy sleeper. Knock harder. A good knocker-up knew the street like a map. Not just addresses, habits, who woke easily, who needed a second knock, who slept near the window, who had just changed shifts, who paid on Friday, who was late with payment. This was not random knocking. It was a precision service. Some knocker-ups carried notebooks. Others memorized their entire route. In mining towns, workers sometimes marked their shift times outside the house so the right person could be woken at the right hour. The tools changed from place to place. A short stick for doors or ground floor windows, a long bamboo pole for upper floors, a wire or small knob at the end so the sound would be sharp but controlled. In some places, a pea-shooter, the quietest and most accurate method. The rule was simple: wake the client, not the neighborhood. And once the client moved, lit a candle, opened the curtain, or shouted that they were awake, the knocker-up moved on. No conversation, no breakfast, no thanks, just the next window, then the next, then the next. By sunrise, the factories were filling, the machines were starting, the city was awake, and the person who woke it was already walking home. The knocker-up looks like a strange little detail from the past, but it was actually part of a much bigger system. Industrial capitalism changed the meaning of time. Before factory work, many people lived by natural rhythms: sunrise, sunset, seasons, weather, task completion. You worked until the job was done. But the factory did not care about sunrise. The factory cared about the clock. 6 o'clock meant 6 o'clock, not when it gets light, not after breakfast, not when the body feels ready. The working day became measured, divided, sold, and punished. Time became discipline. And the knocker-up was one of the people who made that discipline possible. Think about the chain. A textile mill needs workers at dawn. Those workers need to wake up. They cannot afford reliable alarm clocks. So a woman with a stick becomes part of the production system. No woman with the stick, no worker at the loom. No worker at the loom, no cloth. No cloth, no shipment. No shipment, no profit. A giant industrial machine depended on tiny human routines. This is what makes the job so interesting. The knocker-up was not a joke. The knocker-up was infrastructure. Cheap, informal, fragile infrastructure. There was usually no formal contract, no pension, no sick pay, no guarantee. If the knocker-up became ill, clients might oversleep. If the client stopped paying, the knocker-up lost income. If a mechanical alarm clock appeared in the house, the relationship ended. It was a trust economy, a few pence a week in exchange for punctuality. And for decades, it worked. Until a machine arrived that could do the same thing without walking through the cold. Alarm clocks did not appear overnight. Mechanical devices that could signal the time had existed for centuries. But for working families, the important question was not whether such devices existed. The question was whether they were cheap enough, reliable enough, and common enough. For a long time, they were not. That is why knocker-ups survived. But by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, mass production changed the clock industry. Cheap mechanical clocks and alarm clocks became more available. In the United States, companies like Waterbury and Seth Thomas helped turn clockmaking into a mass-market business. In Britain, affordable clocks slowly entered working-class homes. At first, nothing dramatic happened. No one announced the end of the knocker-up. No newspaper headline said, "Human alarm clocks replaced by machines." It was slower than that. One family bought an alarm clock, then another, then a street, then a whole district. The better-paid workers stopped hiring knocker-ups first, then the slightly poorer workers. Then only the poorest streets still needed them. By the 1940s and 1950s, the profession had mostly disappeared. But in some industrial areas, it lasted even longer, into the early 1970s. That is the strange thing about obsolete jobs. They do not always die when the replacement is invented. They die when the replacement becomes cheap enough. A machine does not need to be better than a person, it only needs to be good enough and cheaper. The alarm clock did not have to know your name. It did not have to walk through rain. It did not have to remember your shift. It only had to ring, and that was enough. So what happened to the knocker-ups? Most did what people usually do when a profession disappears. They moved sideways. Some became night watchmen, some worked as cleaners, some delivered milk or newspapers, some took casual jobs around docks, factories, or markets. For older women, the options were worse. A knocker-up route could be one of the few ways to earn small but regular money without entering a factory or taking heavy physical work. When the job disappeared, it did not disappear from an economic chart. It disappeared from real lives. From people who had memorized streets, people who knew every shift change, people who could wake a worker without waking his baby, People who were reliable because reliability was all they had to sell. And that is the quiet tragedy of the knocker-up. They were not hated. They were not feared. They were not blamed. They were simply no longer needed. There was no dramatic ending, no final day, no official retirement of the profession. Just fewer knocks, fewer coins, fewer names on the route, and eventually, silence. But there is one reason this job is remembered with unusual warmth. A mechanical alarm wakes you up. A knocker-up came for you. That is different. It means someone outside knew you had to work. Someone remembered your time. Someone stood in the cold so you could keep your place in the world. It was a tiny relationship, built around money, yes, but still human. And when the alarm clock replaced it, people gained independence, but they also lost a person. Picture Manchester, 1925, early morning, a street still dark. A woman walks with a long pole. She stops under a second-floor window and taps the glass. Nothing. She taps again. Still nothing. Then, from inside the room, she hears a new sound. Metal. A bell. A small mechanical scream. The man inside wakes up without her. She stands there for a second. Then she looks down at her list. That address will not be on it next week. She walks on. That is how the knocker-up disappeared. Not with a collapse, not with a law, not with a revolution. Just one window at a time. For almost a century, human alarm clocks helped industrial Britain wake up. They kept factories moving, docks working, trains loaded, mills running. Most of their names are gone. No monuments, no famous speeches, no place in the grand story of invention. Just a few photographs, a few memories, and the strange image of someone standing in the dark, tapping on a stranger's window, saying without words, "It is time." And next time, we are looking at a dead job that sounds almost absurd, until you realize how dangerous it was. People paid for it. Doctors prescribed it. Kings used it. And for centuries, it was believed to save lives. But in many cases, it did the opposite. This is the story of the people who made a living from blood.